Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ambassador's Lounge. Last Monday, Supreme Court of India passed a judgment upholding the decision of the Indian government to abrogate Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. We have with us today a senior colleague, a seasoned diplomat, Ambassador Zamir Akram, a retired ambassador. He has served Pakistan as ambassador in Kathmandu and as Pakistan's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva. Sir, welcome to the Ambassador's Lounge.
Thank you.
And joining me in the discussion, ladies and gentlemen, is Ambassador Riaz Bukhari. Sir, I'll open the discussion. My first question to you is that this decision of the Supreme Court to uphold the decision of the Indian government to abrogate this Article 370, how do you view it as a diplomat, not as a Pakistani diplomat?
Well, look, my view is slightly different from the mainstream view that you will get in Pakistan and elsewhere about Article 370 and what the Indian government has done. Okay, so at one level, yes, what the Indian government has done is unconstitutional against their own constitution, something that they had guaranteed to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, which we call obviously Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and that this is also contrary to the UN Security Council resolutions relating to the disputed status of Jammu and Kashmir and how that has to be resolved. And it is against the basis or against the very principles of the two key bilateral agreements between Pakistan and India, which is the Simla Agreement and then later on the Lahore Declaration. But, so having said this, I want to add my own take on this. Actually, for me, Article 370 had become irrelevant way back in 1953. Let us recall that it was extended by the government of Prime Minister Nehru to the so-called Riyasat of Jammu and Kashmir headed by Mr. Sheikh Abdullah. In 1948, this law was inserted into the Indian Constitution, 370 and 35A, which gave limited autonomy to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, with the exception of defense, foreign affairs and communications. All other subjects were to be managed by the government of Sheikh Abdullah. However, in 1953, Sheikh Abdullah was forcibly removed and imprisoned. And from 1953 onwards, the autonomy under Article 370 was simply on paper. Because what existed on the ground was either governments that were brought in through rigged elections in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or governments that were controlled by a governor appointed by New Delhi. So the autonomy that the Kashmiris were supposedly given was taken away in 1953, and so this was a fiction, this was a facade. I would say it was a hoax that the Indians tried to perpetrate around the world, a charade that they tried to give around to everyone that we have given them the autonomy to do this and that. Actually, there was no autonomy at all. This is my take. The issue where the problem comes, and this is where what is more important, is Article 35A. Because 35A provided the Kashmiri people everyone, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, whoever they were, with special privileges and rights to property, to employment, to all the other kinds of access to different kinds of government jobs, all these things. This privilege has been removed. And particularly with regard to property issues, non-Kashmiris are now in a position to buy property in Kashmir and settle down in Kashmir, become eligible for all those things that
demographic changes are taking place.
Now this is the difference, is that the purpose of this is what Israel is doing in Palestine, which is called settler colonialism.
Yes, sir.
So this settler colonialism, same thing is being mimicked in Kashmir by Mr. Modi, where he wants to change the Muslim majority of the occupied state and bring in non-Muslims, particularly Hindus from all over the country, to be the majority population. So that is the more dangerous thing. But there are pitfalls in this policy, and if you want, we can discuss that as well. Okay.
Yeah. Sir, Pakistan has rejected the Indian Supreme Court's verdict because of the reason you have just explained. Does our rejection carry any weight? The second part is this verdict irreversible, or do you think this verdict has left the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir at the mercy of Prime Minister Modi?
Okay, so there are several aspects involved in here. First of all, about what we can do. So diplomatically, we have raised this issue. We will continue to raise this issue. We have rejected this change, So that is a policy that we have already declared, and we will pursue this policy. But I don't think that will make Mr. Modi change his approach.
Okay.
However, the point is that the more important point that needs to be taken into account is that by revoking Article 370 and abrogating the special status that Kashmir supposedly enjoyed, will not and has not lead to international acceptance of Kashmir as an integral part of India. So what I said earlier, the disputed status of Kashmir will remain. Okay. And as far as the international community, even if you look at it now, no country has come forward and said that what the Indian Supreme Court has done or what the Indian government had done, that we accept this and that Kashmir is now an integral part of India. No one has done this. And I don't think anybody will. So this is simply a domestic exercise. Whether it is irreversible in India, I don't know. Maybe because the Congress government the Congress party is not in favor of it. So at some point in future, if the Congress wins an election and comes into power, maybe they would undo it. But my point, I stick to my main point, which is that it is immaterial what they do. Because on the ground reality has not changed. They were in occupation of Kashmir, they are still in occupation of Kashmir, no matter what the Indian Supreme Court says.
So we have tried our best, diplomatic efforts have been there, we have provided the Kashmiris with all the moral support and political support, Now, as Riaz said, what are our options now? The world is not buying our narrative. So either we say, okay, no more of this thing, or what should we do?
Okay. So I don't think that the situation is as grim or as hopeless as you are describing it. What we should do first and foremost is that we should stay the course, and we should continue to pursue our principled policy on the Kashmir issue that we have been following all this time. And we should continue to call for the right of self-determination by the Kashmiri people according to the UN resolutions. This should continue to be upheld. This is what we should do. But in the longer run, Mr. Modi will discover that he has created a bigger problem than he had before. Why? First and foremost, the actions that he took in 2019 has alienated even those Kashmiris who were pro-Indian.
Yeah.
The Sheikh Abdullahs and Mehbooba Muftis and those people. He has alienated them. The Kashmiri freedom struggle was already alienated. They have now got even more cause to be alienated because of what they are doing. Secondly, 35A is going to be a crucial factor that will create differences, because apart from the Muslim majority, the Hindus and Buddhists of Jammu and the Buddhists of Ladakh will also lose their privileged positions and their privileges and perks that they enjoyed under the old system, under 35A. So they are also unhappy with what has happened. And there is no way that if the BJP thinks that they will win the next election in Jammu and Kashmir they will not do that. That will not happen. More importantly, Pakistan, we've already talked about that they have provoked Pakistan even more than before, and we are already in a state of confrontation with the Indians. But more dangerous for the Indians is the provocation of China. The Chinese, as we were discussing earlier on, have issued a very strong statement rejecting what the Indian Supreme Court has done, and similarly they had rejected what the Modi government had done in 2019. And if you remember, after 2019, in June 2020,
Yes, there
was the start of military skirmishes between Indian and Chinese troops, particularly in the Galwan region of Ladakh. It is said that Chinese have since taken control of nearly 1,000 square kilometers of territory that the Indians claim. And this is being said by Indians, not anyone else. And so the confrontation between India and China has increased. And what India is now caught up in is a two-front confrontation with Pakistan on the line of control and with China on the line of actual control. And now you have a situation where three nuclear powers are in confrontation in this region. So this is not something that is in India's favor or in India's interest to have such a situation on its ground.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. As you have mentioned that, there is unanimity as far as the political parties of Indian illegally occupied Kashmir are concerned. National Conference, Democratic Party, all parties, Hurriyat Conference, all have rejected the verdict.
Yes.
But what we see on the road, in the streets, the reaction is a bit, muted at the popular level. How do you see, the future of Kashmir issue after this verdict?
Well, I think that the Kashmir situation will continue to remain unstable, uncertain, and there will continue to be incidents of uprising and violence. The Indian repression against the people of Kashmir will continue. I mean, look, the situation is that Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is in a state of siege. It is under siege by over 100,000 Indian troops.
Yeah.
They are armed with all kinds of draconian laws.
Yeah.
So because of this, they have been able to suppress the expression of opposition by the people. But that does not mean that the people have accepted this. On the contrary, the more you repress and suppress people, the more the strong reaction is bound to come, and it will come. It will come in the shape of some kind of incident like Pulwama. It will come in other ways. So, for the Indian government, if Mr. Modi was under the impression that he is going to abrogate our 370, 35A and bring peace and stability to occupied Jammu and Kashmir, he is mistaken. It's not going to happen.
So, first of all, it was nice to know that you think that the Kashmiris have not reconciled to the Indian rule in Kashmir, the change of status. Having said that, sir, at the domestic front, this decision comes at a very important time. The impending elections in May, June. Do you think this decision of the Supreme Court will give boost to the BJP chances?
Oh, of course. That's why he's done it. It will. That's the whole game plan. Mr. Modi's game plan is that he will play on this.
Yeah.
Just as he played on Pakistan being the bogeyman in 2018, 2019. Yeah. 2019, when he went for the election. He will play on this card that, oh, I have solved Kashmir. Kashmir is now an integral part of India and all this. Although on the ground he's changed nothing, but this is what it is. So yes, he will win with a thumping majority. But will he be able to deliver peace in Kashmir to India? No.
Or in the region?
Or in the region is a completely a different thing altogether.
Yeah, so coming back to Pakistan, as we all know, presently we have an interim setup. And, Foreign Minister has, rejected the verdict in his statement. So the Foreign Office, another statement. With impending elections which are going to be held in, I hope, in the beginning of next year, how do you see that decision will impact the bilateral relations between India and Pakistan?
Decision on the Kashmir?
No, this Supreme Court decision on our bilateral relations with India.
No, okay. So I think that, I said this in the beginning, that of course this is going to aggravate the relationship even further.
Even further?
Yes, because I think that the Indians or the Indian government, let's say, the Modi government, will become even more aggressive.
Okay.
It will become even more belligerent towards Pakistan. It will first and foremost, it will say that there is nothing to talk about there is no dispute, Kashmir is not
they
dispute.
had resolved it.
And that the only thing that there is in dispute is so-called Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which is Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. So they will say that that's the only issue, and then you will see again some of their Indian ministers making claims that we will attack and occupy and this and that. So they will become more belligerent, they will reject any kind of dialogue with Pakistan.
All right.
So the relationship between Pakistan and India will go down even further. I don't see, in fact, I've never believed that the Indians are ready, especially the Modi government, has ever been ready to resolve the Kashmir dispute with Pakistan. So to have believed that this is possible on Pakistan's part, or any Pakistani leader or official, if they believed that, then they were being extremely naive. This is not going to happen. And so we need to see the writing on the wall. It's been there for a long time, but we simply don't want to admit the fact that the Indians are not ready. What we should do, if you ask me, is that we should work with China and we should try and raise the level of this issue globally, and China already has done it. After the 2019 action by the Indian government, China ensured that the Kashmir issue was raised twice, not once, but twice in the Security Council, for the first time since 1965. That the Chinese were able to do. So we need to work with the Chinese to make sure that this issue remains very much on the international agenda.
So, you have read the decision of the Indian Supreme Court. One part of that was that they have asked or ordered the government to restore the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir ASAP, of course with no provincial town. How do you see that? They are calling it a strategic statement or something like that.
It's a cover-up. There's nothing in it. If you look at it closely, what do they mean by restoring the statehood? Okay, so Kashmir will be like any other Indian state of the Union.
Yeah.
That's what they
Yes.
want, right? And as a state of the Union, they would be given certain rights. That's the positive way of looking at it, that they would have a state assembly and they would have a state government, they would have certain provincial subjects would be their mandate and all these kind of things. That is what they are saying. Okay? But I'm saying that this is a cover-up because even though the Indians are pretending that they have integrated Kashmir and this is now a state of the Indian Union like any other state, the fact remains that the majority of the people of that state reject any kind of association with India, and that reality cannot be changed. So the 100,000 Indian troops will continue to be there. The repression of the Kashmiris will continue to take place. The conflict between the Kashmiri people and the Indian government will continue to occur. So in reality, it doesn't change anything. By changing the legal perspective on paper doesn't change what's happening on the ground.
Yeah. Sir, in this judgment, which I call, and our media has also termed it as a grave injustice to the people of India illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In this judgment, the Indian Supreme Court has also ordered two things. A, holding of elections by September next year. And two, formation of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. How do you see that?
Again, it's an eyewash. Do you think that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is really going to engage with the All Parties Hurriyat Conference and ask them what do they want? It's very clear what they want.
Yeah.
So if they want to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission with Mr. Umar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti or something, who are already quizzlings.
They were collaborators in the past, sir.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're going to have a dialogue with reconciliation with your own quizzlings, what is the value of that? There is no value.
They have not mentioned, the Supreme Court in its judgment. They have not mentioned the sacrifices made by the people of Kashmir. More than 100,000 Kashmiris lost their lives. But they talk about the violation of human rights of a certain community.
The Pandit community.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. It's an eyewash. Yeah. And look, let's be very, very clear. Mr. Modi's Hindutva campaign has brought the Indian system, whether it is the bureaucracy, whether it is the judiciary or the media, even the armed forces, under the tutelage of the so-called Hindutva campaign, or the Hindutva identity. So no one actually dares go against what Mr. Modi wants in India. Okay, so if you look at the Indian Supreme Court, just look at the decision which they had taken a year or so ago regarding the Babri Masjid issue, which was a travesty of justice. Look at the fact that the Indian judicial system has failed to bring a criminal like Modi, who was responsible for the massacre and the carnage in Gujarat in 2002, to justice. Although the evidence against him is overwhelming, but so the judiciary is not, the Indian judiciary is not going to take on the Hindutva brigades. In fact, I would say that they are even part of it now.
Why don't we consider altering the status of Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir?
That's a very important question. And again, speaking for myself, I think that that is what the people of Gilgit-Baltistan have been asking for. And for that you need to understand the history, and the history is that the Maharaja of Kashmir under the British colonial times was able to, first of all, he bought Kashmir first, was one thing. The other thing is that with the help of the British, he incorporated these small kingdoms, these small areas of Gilgit, Baltistan, Skardu and all those areas that were there. And we should also recall that at the time of independence, the people of Gilgit-Baltistan actually rose up in revolt on their own against the Dogra rulers in Srinagar. So the point is that these people have never seen themselves as being part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay? And they've always seen themselves as having been colonized by the Maharaja with the help of the British. So they have a right when they say that we want to be an integral part of Pakistan. But we have a couple of difficulties. One difficulty is, of course, that we need to take the people, the leadership of Azad Jammu and Kashmir on board. We should not do something which alienates them on this issue, number one. Number two, we need to see how this will impact on the UN Security Council resolutions and on our own constitutional provisions in this context. So now, I personally believe that there is a legal fix on how this can be done by amending the constitution appropriately and giving the people of Gilgit-Baltistan their right to their provincial status, if they want it. But we need to do this in a careful way. I think the constitutional amendment can say that this is being done first and foremost through an process through a referendum, so the electoral process has to be a transparent process. And secondly, that this does not, we should also we will have to say that this does not in any way compromise, undermine, whatever the language use, the ultimate resolution of the issue of Jammu and Kashmir according to UN Security Council resolutions. So this kind of a language needs to be found where we can do this.
Thank you very much, sir. It was very educative.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is all we have for today. The Pakistani the interim foreign minister, in his presser, he stated that the final disposition of Jammu and Kashmir is to be made in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions, and it is to be made in accordance with the aspirations of the Kashmiri people. This is what Pakistan believes. This is what Pakistan has always stood for. The Kashmir issue has to be resolved in accordance with the wishes of the people. The judgment which has been the verdict given by the Supreme Court, it cannot validate the decision of the Indian government. Thank you for watching Ambassador's Lounge.